So we're finally here, the end of the 60th specials, the end of the road. The Giggle has just aired. We have all three of the specials now. It's over, and it only kind of lasted like a fortnight, which it always was going to, because it's just 3 stories, 3 episodes. But yeah, it's kind of come and gone quite quickly. The Giggle has just aired. I wasn't able to watch it live because I was seeing Christopher Eccleston on stage, but I have now caught up, and yes. So I don't know where to begin with this, really. Where to begin? I want to get onto the controversial stuff from the second half, but I think I'm gonna wait, because there was quite a lot going on before that, with the Toymaker and everything. I think it very much was a story of 2 halves, or a game of 2 halves, appropriately enough. It very much felt like sort of up to that sort of halfway point, the first half hour or whatever, was almost a kind of different story, or a different type of story. Like, the kind of the thing we'd been promised, the thing we're expecting with an invasion thing, with the Toymaker, and I really vibed with that. I really liked that. The whole thing with Unit as well, and this new team of Unit regulars. They didn't all get loads to do, but I suppose in time, people like that new Colonel guy, Colonel Ibrahim, I think he's called. I know in next year's season he's going to be back, so I guess he'll get more to do. He'll get the new Sergeant Benson or whatever. Kate as well, I think, came off fairly good out of this. I think, again, there's always a thing with her and people and characters like that they get some good stuff to do early on in the story, but I think towards the end, particularly like a special like this where there's so much else going on, they kind of get forgotten about a little bit. Similar sort of thing with Mel, maybe, although she wasn't that scene at the end with the nobles, which is quite nice. But yeah, I think Kate, I liked it. I think it was a better outing for her than some other ones. I mean, I thought Power of the Doctor was pretty good for her compared to other ones. I think this as well. She's got lots of kind of lines and technical stuff, and leading the leading unit, bossing people around, things like that. Mel as well, obviously great to see her. The fans knew that it was coming. We've been told that it was just for shooting season next year, but we'd guessed. There was the evidence there. The unit helipad, that shot from the Disney trailer as well. Again, with her, it was a little bit of a weird one because there wasn't loads of time to devote to her and the reunion. I think, as kind of, you could have sort of predicted, really, with all of the stuff going on in the story. And again, she sort of gets a little bit forgotten about in the second half, but I think the stuff we did get in the first half was really nice. It was nice to have an excuse for her to show off her vocal cords as well, albeit very briefly, but with that, a bit with the C major arpeggio, like a little in-joke there to kind of allude to Bonnie's other work on the stage and with musicals and things. So that was nice, and obviously Bonnie is great, and we've now got a sort of refashioned version of that character that fits better, I think, with the show these days, and it's just a more fully fleshed out thing. We've got an brief explanation about how she ended up back on Earth after Savlon Glitz had reached a ripe old age and died, and there's a big Viking funeral or whatever it was, all that stuff. There were some great references in this. I mean, that's something to talk about. There was that. There was all the stuff at the end, like Malik Chen, Logopolis, God knows what else. All those things that Shooty and Dave were saying to each other. I think probably my highlight as well in terms of references. I mean, obviously the Toymaker things as well, but with the puppets of the companions, that was quite a nice, genuine surprise. I think people have said, oh, maybe it'll be something like that. Maybe the Toymaker will do a little puppet show of past Doctors, past companions. But yeah, we hadn't sort of seen any of that. It hadn't leaked, unlike other parts of the story, which we'll get onto, which had been leaked in quite a bit of detail. But that is something that was a genuine surprise for me watching it. I was like, oh yeah, that's nice. Having Amy there, having Clara, having Bill, all in the episode appropriate outfits for their final stories as well, and tying in that whole thing of how all those 3 companions, one after another, all died sort of because of the Doctor's negligence, and in a way you could sort of frame it that way if you like. And then obviously with the 13th Doctor companions, you can't really make them fit that format formula, so it had to do something different with the Flux, which again sort of that's sort of tied nicely, I think. But yeah, it's some nice references peppered around this one. I think in terms of it as an anniversary episode as well, that's an interesting way to think about it, and how well did it sort of meet that criteria there, and the whole thing of an anniversary special. How good was this as an anniversary special? You see, I think the Toymaker stuff was quite good for that, and obviously that bit which we had as a preview clip a few days back of the flashback, where there's very brief little glimpses, a very different type of flashback for Doctor Who, where you have those little glimpses of the original Toymaker story with the first Doctor, with Michael Gough as the original Toymaker as well, just kind of, flicking between the current day iterations of the characters and those ones, and colourised as well. That was really nice and, kind of seamlessly done. I mean, obviously it was quite a jolty sequence, but yeah, I thought it was a nice way to kind of hark back to that and to maybe awaken people's memories, people that watched that original serial or remember the character, or remember the original stories. So that was nice, and I think the invasion sort of feel of that first half as well was nice for that. And obviously there was the stuff in the second half that sets up the future and kind of sort of launches the show forward and launches the next chapter, like that thing that Stephen Moffat always said about the Day of the Doctor and anniversary stories, how they shouldn't just look to the past but they should look to the future as well, which we'll get onto that stuff later on. But I think overall perhaps it maybe felt a little bit lacking, both as a special for the anniversary and just a story in its own right. I think, like I say, that it was that very much that thing of two halves, a game of two halves. I was really enjoying all the Toymaker stuff, the invasion stuff, the unit stuff, and then we just kind of reached that halfway point after the Spice Girls sequence as well, I should add, which, it was one of those, like the Rasputin thing, where I think I need to watch it a few more times to properly sort of appreciate it, but obviously bonkers and brilliant. We go out onto the unit helipad. It all kind of plays out as I think we sort of expected, where David gets shot there by the galvanic beam, and it's like, oh, okay, here we know what's coming here. And sort of from that point, it kind of turns into a very different type of story, I think. Like, obviously the Toymaker's still there, and they still end up defeating him, and, it all kind of is tied up. But it's a very much more static story, I think, after that. Like, there's not as much drama or anything, and, after the regeneration and the whole bi-generation thing as well, or whatever we're calling it, the split regeneration, it's very much more felt like a kind of logistical thing of, right, rather than kind of like playing out a sequence of events of like story here, we're going to just devote the second half of this episode to explaining the logistics of this new thing and how it works and how we've reasoned it and explained it and made it sort of fit, which I felt it was a little bit disappointing. We still got some good Neil Patrick Harris moments after that point, but I think a lot of his good stuff and a lot of his stuff in general was in the first half, and so it's a shame almost to not have more of the carnage in the streets, in Bristol doubling as London or stuff like that. There was some nice stuff in his toy room as well, but it was a little bit like the whole maze thing with the doors and the corridors and stuff. We saw some other rooms, like with the Stooky Sue puppets and things like that, and the Doctor puppet and the puppet of the other character as well. But it might have been nice to see a bit more of the toy room and the puppet thing as well, with the theatre, the worldwide premiere and all that stuff with the companions. So let's move on to that second half stuff, which was leaked, and the leaks were basically true. There's quite a lot of detail. Now we can speak about it freely. I've been refraining from discussing the details in these videos just because that's the only fair way to do it, and I was aware of it. I had seen bits and pieces of it beforehand myself, so with that, as ever with leaks, it would have been nice to go into that blind and not know in advance quite how that was going to play out, because I think people had a pretty good idea that there was going to be some multi-Doctor thing with Ncuti and David on screen together, where the regeneration wasn't going to go as planned. It wasn't going to be straightforward. There was going to be a splinter off with the 15th Doctor thing, and they were both going to be there interacting, and then the thing of David the 14th Doctor sort of staying behind, and the 15th kind of going off, and the two TARDISes and all that sort of stuff. It sort of had been talked about. It's an interesting one, and I haven't watched yet or properly watched the in-vision commentary for this that Russell has done, where I believe he has kind of outlined sort of the implications of this for the future and the reasoning for it and why he's done it and what it might mean for other Doctors as well. I think he sort of hinted at that in that commentary, like how it would be a way to keep the other Doctors involved, rather than being like a linear thing of this Doctor regenerates into this one, and it would be more like a kind of multiverse thing, like with your Marvel superheroes or whatever, where they all kind of carry on existing independent of each other, and you can kind of pull them out of the toy box at any point. I think that's the kind of practical thing he's thinking here, and that's what I was kind of thinking beforehand going into this as well, that he's probably going to say something along those lines, that, you know, rather than it being a linear thing, all these Doctors are still out there in their own timelines, and it makes it a lot easier to just pull them back, bring them back for cameos or whatever in the future. I think in terms of the execution of it in the episode, it was a little bit weird because it didn't quite kind of go into that detail. It was kind of treated as a one-off thing, this bi-generation thing. It was very much a way of like keeping David or the 40th Doctor behind on Earth and giving him, yeah, that sort of life he's never had, which I did appreciate. I did like the angle of it, you know, giving him a family and stuff, letting this exhausted Doctor like settle down on Earth with his friends and just like relax and not have to constantly be on the go and like, you know, running around, traveling around the universe and saving stuff. I liked that angle to it. I can see how it's probably a bit controversial, the whole idea anyway of this being a different generation and of the Doctor sort of not just continuing, where we've got these two Doctors on the go now as well. I think if it had been treated or been explicitly stated on screen that this wasn't just a thing that applies to David Tennant but all other Doctors as well, it might have gone down a bit better. I mean, I haven't really seen the response, to be honest, but I think some people kind of looking at the leak beforehand and thinking, oh heck, gosh, what's this all about? Yes, so maybe in the future it'll make more sense. I think in terms of the episode, like I say, I appreciated what they were doing with David in terms of the character angle there. I think the execution just in that second half, it was a little bit off in terms of the episode as a whole, in terms of balancing those two halves, because it did just feel like a logistical thing. You know, it was great to see Shooty. Shooty was pretty good. I need to kind of go back and really sort of just appreciate his performance and what he was doing there, because it did feel slightly different to David, like a kind of contrast with him and a contrast to how the Doctor has been. It felt more like playful and just sort of, yeah, carefree almost, which kind of ties into the whole idea of it really. But yeah, I don't know, I think that would be my overall takeaway from this. You know, the Toymaker stuff, the invasion stuff, the carnage of all that stuff, and the kind of political side of that as well, which I sort of predicted, I think, in the video I did with Miles about that, about how there's going to be some political angle to this whole thing of the Giggle, and the whole idea of the Giggle, that this thing kind of that's seeded into every screen in the world or on Earth, whatever. Brilliant, loved all that sort of stuff. I kind of wish there was more of that in the second half, and although I'm not, like, by no means not against the whole bi-generation idea, I think maybe just in the second half, with the execution, they didn't fudge it, but I think it was a bit of a shame that the story changed pace quite so much, and it was almost like from that point onwards, oh, everything's sort of fine now, and we're not going to devote any more time to the Toymaker really, or to his invasion, to what's going on there, and all the other characters like Mel and Kate and stuff. So yeah, I think that's my overall sort of thoughts on this. Broadly positive, I think more positive than last week, certainly in terms of like an initial reaction, initial response to it. I think whether this or the Star Beast, you know, kind of ends up being my favourite of the three, I'm not too sure yet. I need to kind of go back to this one, I think, but certainly kind of one of those two, I think, in terms of the ones I've enjoyed the most. But yeah, those are my thoughts, initial thoughts on the Giggle. Lots more to come in terms of like a roundtable review, hopefully, and other videos in the coming days and weeks, you know, discussing all of this stuff. And of course, Christmas as well, which is coming up. We've got a trailer for that now and stuff like that. But let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Do you love or hate this story? What do you think of the Toymaker, of Mel, of the way that the regeneration was handled? You know, this whole bi-regeneration thing, or bi-generation. Do you love the idea? Do you hate it? Are you somewhere in between? You know, what are people's reactions to this? I'm really interested to know, because it was leaked in one form and it's been sort of talked about in private circles for all this time, but now we can finally discuss the implications of it publicly as well. So yeah, very, very interesting stuff. If you haven't enjoyed this video, please leave a like and also subscribe to the channel if you are new. But otherwise, I will say goodbye for now and see you again in another video very, very soon. So thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.